You don't want to talk about his
No.
You're spending all this time
Something I didn't want to talk about it.
Kamala.
I'm not criticizing.
Sounds like criticism
Let's
to
be
me.
clear,
He just
Anna.
asked a
Well, then you got
question.
to open your ears. What I'm saying is trying to give her suggestions on how I think she can close the deal.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
With Republicans like Chris Christie, who needs Democrats, right? In this one, we're about to have a look at Chris Christie going on The View and actually correcting them at times, but really what he's doing is making a case for Kamala Harris to win this election. And it's sad to me to think that this guy was trying to be the presidential nominee on the Republican ticket. We're that close to the deep state becoming in full control. And I don't know if this dude is really the deep state or not, but the fact is, this dude, if he was on the Republican ticket, would make this election literally, as a South Park reference, an election between voting for a douche sandwich and a turd. Or maybe it was giant douche and turd sandwich. Regardless, you get the point, right? And, you know, some people might think that's what the case is anyways, but for me, I believe that Donald Trump is America and Americans' last hope from becoming a communist country, essentially. I saw a vote from Scott Pressler today, and he encouraged people to vote like their lives depend on it, which is something that I wholeheartedly agree with. So if you're America first, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button because you're certainly in the right place. Now let's check out the video.
NBC News political contributor, Chris Christie. Welcome back. So, Chris, before we get into anything else, I want to know if you have anything to say about our conversation. Do you want to weigh in on it?
Well, I thought the screw you thing was great Jersey way to end the segment.
Well, that's
that was
Brooklyn.
really good.
That's
You know,
Brooklyn.
we're going to adopt her for that one. No, look, I do think that the coverage that you were talking about, I think the reason for it is he's numbed us.
He's numbed us.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 9 years of relentless lowering and lowering of the bar, and after a while, everybody becomes numb, and most particularly the people who spend a lot of their lives on this. You know, a lot of the American people kind of dodge in and out of political conversation, but for people like all of you sitting around this table, like me, who do this for a living, you've been relentlessly hit with his language for all that
Shouldn't they have
time.
at least fact-checked along the way? Because all of these lies have accumulated since he came down on that escalator.
Look, as a matter of ethics, yes, but I will say that the fact-checking that goes on at times helps him, because for those people who feel aggrieved, they feel like, oh, well, they're just picking on him. And I think the last thing we need to do in these last 10 days is to make him more of a martyr than he is already. And so,
By not
you know,
fact-checking him?
well,
His
yeah, but
supporters
no,
have
but I mean, I think that at this point, the people who know that he's a liar, they've already made up their minds. You know, they've made up their minds of where they're going to vote. The people who don't believe, or actually do believe everything that he says, you're not going to change their minds either.
What about those undecided?
Those undecideds, I really don't believe the undecideds are making the decision on Donald Trump.
There's people, Chris, who have Trump amnesia, that have forgotten, because for 4 years we've had a decent man and a decent woman as his vice president in the White House who don't talk this way, who don't say these things. And I think that some people have forgotten. To me, it's important to remind them, because for some people, it does matter.
I just don't think those people are going to vote, Anna.
What about
If they
first-time
have that kind
voters,
of
young people?
amnesia, they're not going to vote. And for the first-time voters,
I would have liked to forget him.
Yeah, I think that what's going on here is it's all up to Vice President Harris. The people who have, at this point, 10 days out, not already decided they're voting for Trump, they're not voting for Trump.
Yeah.
They're either voting for Harris or they're not voting.
Well, that
And so for me, that's why I think that what the vice president's doing now should be focused exclusively on closing the deal about why she would be the best president. Saying that, you know, Donald Trump is awful and a fascist and all the rest of that, I don't disagree with any of it. But those people are already sold.
So you
if you believe that, they're sold. It's done.
So who do you think is going to win? Who's going to win?
Look, 10 days ago, I would have told you that she's going to win.
And now?
And I think she's had a bad 10 days.
Why?
Because I don't think there's advantage and disadvantage to having come in the race as late as she did. The advantage is she didn't have to go through all the primaries and go through all of that goes on that wears you down a bit. But the disadvantage is people don't know her. I mean, yes, look.
She's been the vice president for almost 4 years.
You know,
How could they not
Sonny,
know
you know
her?
the old joke. A woman had 2 sons.
Yes.
One went to sea, the other became vice president of the United States. Neither were ever heard from again. I mean, the job of the vice president is to stand 3 steps behind the president, out of focus.
Well, then
They
why
didn't know.
Then
I mean,
why
look,
did they keep accusing her of not doing anything when she was vice president? What did Mike Pence do, I'd like to know?
nothing.
It's so funny to me that she had asked that question. What Kamala Harris was supposed to do was be in charge of the border, right? Remember, she's the border czar. I know you want to deny that Kamala Harris was in charge of that, but that's the job that Joe Biden delegated to Kamala Harris. And you ask what Mike Pence did? Well, Mike Pence was the one that was working with Dr. Fauci when it came to everything that happened during the pandemic. So, you know, he was co-signing to everything that Fauci was saying, essentially. And, you know, it's funny, these Democrats basically are so quick to forget that. You know, they want to talk about forgetting what Donald Trump has done. And this is how you know Chris Christie is not a real Republican. He's certainly not America First, and he definitely doesn't care about the process of a democratically ran election, right? I think that's what it's called. I know we're a republic. But when he talks about how Kamala Harris was appointed so late, he conveniently leaves out the fact that she didn't earn 1 delegate vote at all, right? You'd think somebody that tried to be the Republican candidate and went through the rigors of a primary, like that he says, you know, wears you down, would kind of be offended and a little pissed off the fact that Kamala Harris just got appointed. She didn't have to run opposed by anybody to get those delegates to be the Democratic nominee, right? I'm sure at this point he's wishing that he would have had the chance and maybe try to run on the Democratic ticket, which we all know, or maybe you don't, but had they had a Democratic primary, RFK Jr. probably would have beat Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be the nominee for this election, which is ironic now that RFK Jr. is backing Donald Trump. And it's an example, it's a dividing line of people that care about Americans and people who care about America and America's future versus people who are just trying to get power, you know, for whatever their own reasons, or if they want to serve the deep state or whatever it is. There's definitely a dividing line. But let's check out the rest of this video and then I'll wrap it up.
Look, but see, I think that's part of. I think that's part of the problem too with the vice president. I think one of the things that she needs to say when they're blaming her for certain things that were the president's decision.
Right.
I had a lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, most of the time I didn't ask her, like, "Are you think I'm right on this or not?" I mean, she gave her input. I made a decision.
Yeah.
It's my decision, not hers.
Right, yep.
So I think Vice President Harris should say, and she didn't say it here. I watched you guys that day. When you asked her, you know, what would you do different than Biden? She didn't say it. I gotta believe there are things she disagreed with him on. You're human beings. You're gonna have.
Well, they've had
she's a bright woman with a mind of her own.
Yeah.
She's clearly gonna have times where she looked at President Biden and said,
They've
I
had a
wouldn't do
successful
that.
administration, though, and she's not going to throw him under the bus. But
there's
I
a
wanna
difference,
ask
though,
you-
Sonny, between throwing somebody under the bus and saying,
And
I had an honest
differentiating.
disagreement with him on X, whatever it is. Because you can have an honest
could've
disagreement with
invested more
someone you have
time in
enormous
this.
respect for.
Why not? Why not?
And I gotta say, if Kamala Harris is either afraid to or unable to draw that distinction between herself and Joe Biden and, you know, use their words, throw Joe Biden under the bus when she's trying to win the candidates, or not win the candidacy, she already has that, try to become the next president of the United States, that shows to me that she is completely incapable of having a discussion of with other world leaders. There's no way that she could run this country in the way that we need this country to be ran, which running the federal government, I mean.
We're doing here what Charlemagne the God was talking about yesterday. We are holding her to this high standard of her closing message needs to be this and this and this and that. His closing message is Arnold Palmer's package
Right.
dancing for 39 minutes like a
was
wacko
generals.
job.
It was generals.
And
You're
that's-
making fries at McDonald's, so why don't you tell him something? Why don't we talk about his closing message? What do you think about that?
What I think about that is that he is who he's always been, and he's not going to gain any voters in these last 10 days.
That's the point. I mean,
But
that you don't want to talk about his.
No,
You're spending all
Something
this time
I don't want to talk
criticizing
about it.
Kamala.
I'm not criticizing.
Sounds like a criticism
Let's
to
be
me.
clear,
She
Anna.
asked a
Well, then you got
question.
to open your ears. What I'm saying is trying to give her suggestions on how I think she can close the deal.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Did you see her face when he told her you gotta open your ears, Anna? That was pretty funny. But Chris Christie is completely wrong here. He's acting like no candidate can earn or lose voters in the last 10 days, and that's just completely absurd. Trump just went on Joe Rogan, and I believe that he won over a lot of people. He was able to demonstrate that a lot of the decisions that Donald Trump made while he was president were actually way more calculated and thought out than people gave him credit for. When he talks about how California basically drained this huge lake into the ocean where they had water before, and now, not having water is a big issue for them. Some of the ways how he dealt with our foreign adversaries, some of the details that he was able to give. It's really cool, honestly. And if you know those stories, the way Donald Trump was able to talk about it without actually saying a lot of these things shows to me how calculated he is, even with the words that he uses. And additionally, the fact that he was able to maintain a 3-hour conversation that's unedited with Joe Rogan, where we know Kamala Harris is completely incapable of doing that. And as it pertains to Kamala being on the show, Joe Rogan, in his very kind Joe Rogan manner, put out a post on X talking about why she's not going to be on his show, and it's for this reason. He says, also, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do this is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make that happen. And so to me, that demonstrates that Kamala Harris is unable to have a 3-hour conversation. There is no reason, no excuse in the world, especially considering Donald Trump just did it, for Kamala Harris to not go on Joe Rogan's podcast in his studio in Austin and have an unedited 3-hour stream conversation, right? At a time like this where she would get the last word, and it's just not going to happen because she can't do it. So if you are incapable of having a 3-hour long unedited conversation with Joe Rogan, or anyone for that matter, you are certainly incapable of running the federal government of the United States. Plain and simple. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.